Okay, welcome to the second X-Force webinar, and we're happy to have Phil Weinmeister with us. Phil is many things. I can't tell you all of them, but I will let him explain to you all the many things he is. And today he's going to talk about sharing his expertise, how he shared his expertise in the Salesforce ecosystem, and more generally, how he shares his expertise in more broadly. So without further ado, here's Phil. Hi, Phil.
Hey, how are you doing today, Leonard?
Good. You win the microphone prize today, I have to say.
Thank you. That was my primary goal, so that's good.
You have a very deep voice in that microphone too. I mean, it's just I got to get one of those. Is what I'm
My
coming back
my
for you.
wife has told me that, my alter ego is a game show host, so maybe that's a good thing.
All right, Drew Carey. Let's hear let's hear what you got to say. What's tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
All the many things that you are.
Yeah. Glad to be here today, and thanks everyone for joining us. Really hope you guys get some value out of this chat. Um, so yeah, I live in Powder Springs, Georgia. I've been in this area for about 15 years now. Time flies, and I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 10 years at this point, and it definitely has been a career changer, a game changer for me. And from pretty early on, I've been looking to share and teach, and we're going to be talking about that a lot today. Just in terms of kind of where I'm at right now, I'm the VP of product for Seven Summits, headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I travel up there a good bit, not during COVID times, but and then I do various things. I mean, I lead our product team. We build Lightning accelerators on the platform, primarily for community cloud implementations. So that's my main function at Seven Summits, and some of the things that I've been involved with that I'm sure we'll talk about. I have authored a few books about Salesforce. Recently, just completed my second Pluralsight course, also on Salesforce Communities, and just starting a third one. And also, I pretty regularly, again during non-COVID times, do a lot of presentations and demos, just helping people to understand, uh, how to get the most out of Salesforce, and how to know, what to look for, what's coming out, and tips and tricks, all that good stuff.
Cool. Well, let's start with a little more. Let's dig in a little more with talk about the Salesforce community first, and then get to your books and everything. You're an MVP, Salesforce MVP. You want to tell everybody what that is and how you got that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Salesforce has a program called the Salesforce MVPs. It's been around for a while now. I don't. I mean, I would guess probably about 10 years, give or take a few years. And essentially, the program is to recognize evangelists of Salesforce. It's kind of how I put it. That's not Salesforce's language per se, but there are a number of people out there across different roles, whether it's uh, business analysts, administrators, developers, TAs, project managers, a lot of different roles that are extremely passionate and knowledgeable about Salesforce. And these people, really just as an extension of who they are out there contributing, sharing, um, in various ways. And Salesforce has a program to recognize that. So there is a lot of people aspire to become an MVP, which is a great thing. There is no secret formula to becoming an MVP. Again, it's really a recognition of those individuals who are already doing a lot in the community. Um, but there are definitely things that you can look at across MVPs and see some common patterns. Overall, these are individuals who really bring a lot of new content out into the ecosystem, and that's definitely something I've done for a while. So I was first selected in it was 5 years ago, so 2015. It was pretty exciting at the time. Definitely a big deal to me, and I've been renewed 5 times now, which is really cool. But yeah, at the time I had been blogging, and I had written my first book. That was my first really big contribution to the ecosystem. And yeah, like I said, there's no secret formula. They don't really tell you, here is why we selected you. I would imagine that the book had something to do with it, but yeah, it's really an honor, and it's cool because they do provide us with some opportunities and definitely an elevated platform to share. So I've had opportunities to do some presentations around the country that I probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And I've had a number of people come up to me after the presentations and let me know that they got a lot of value out of it. It's really helpful. So that's always extremely rewarding.
That's cool. So, was your first book the one on communities or the one on Clicks Not Code,
Yeah, so
Salesforce
back in
development?
2015, um, I came out with practical Salesforce development without code. So it was a non-communities book, just general platform. Now the world of clicks not code or declarative development has just absolutely exploded in the past 5 years, and it should have, because Salesforce has invested so much into these awesome tools on the platform. But back then, I mean, workflow was still a real primary tool. When I wrote my book, Process Builder didn't even exist at the time. It actually came out the very next release after my book came out, which at the time uh, was a little bit frustrating that, oh, that just came out. But actually, when I talk to people about it, it worked out for the best, because it's almost better not to cover something that's brand new, that's going to transform so rapidly. Because if I had included it, it would have just probably not even looked like Process Builder does, after a year or two. So yeah, that was 2015, and it was pretty interesting how that actually happened. I had a coworker. I worked at EDL Consulting. Some of you may have heard of EDL Consulting. That is the company out of which Cloud Craze came, which was later acquired by Salesforce and is now Salesforce B2B Commerce. Also, then the remainder of EDL was purchased by Simplus. So a number of you out there may be familiar with the company. But while I was there, I had an individual really encourage me to start sharing out more of, because he noticed I was really into teaching and sharing, and encouraged me to start doing more. And I started blogging regularly, and that's when an editor from A Press reached out to me, and I really wasn't sure if it was a joke email or a prank or something like that. And he said, "Yeah, feel free to call me to make sure this is a real thing." But um, he was with A Press, which is part of Springer Nature, and he had been talking to someone in the technology space, and realized, hey, we need to have some books on this platform called Salesforce. They had 0 books on
It's a new
Salesforce.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, reached out to me, and I was like, I I mean, I didn't feel qualified at the time, but I couldn't turn that down. That was such an awesome opportunity, and now to a degree, the rest is history. So yeah, that was the first book back in 2015.
So, I think a lot of people, when they think about writing a book, are super intimidated about just how much work it would be to write a book. That you have to have some kind of a strategy. So, what was your strategy to write the book to fit it in with your busy career and you got a big family and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I failed to mention this before, and they're a huge part of my life. So that was a mistake on my part. But yeah, I have a lovely wife and 4 children. So people are always shocked when I tell them that, especially while I'm writing a book or something like that, because
Yeah.
they're like, "How do you do that?" And I think, yeah, it's a good question. I'd love to talk a little bit about that, because whether you're writing a book or doing something else that's extracurricular, that is a good question to answer is how do you balance this all out? How do you do all of it and have a life and not just be consumed by work plus more work? So I had to be. So when I started, again, I hadn't done anything like that before, so it was new to me. So I was a little bit intimidated for sure, but I also was very passionate about it, and I think that's really important. I mean, you today there are a lot of avenues for writing. You can definitely self-publish and things like that, and that's totally fine. It's a legitimate way to do it. But however you do it, it's you want to be extremely passionate about it. So do you care enough to put the time in is one thing. If you're a little bit indifferent, like, oh, that would be kind of cool, it's probably not going to happen. So know what you're passionate about. I was fairly disciplined about it. I came up with this my own schedule to break down, okay, chapters. Here is my timeline of, some of them, depending on how long they were, I give myself more or less time for each chapter, and I really try to stick to that. That was a key thing. Writing the book took about 8 months in total, so definitely a large investment. Some days, there were days where I didn't write, and there were days where I spent 7 or 8 hours. I mean, there were Saturdays and Sundays where I took up most of the day to write. Um, in addition to that, I would get up early, stay up late. So, early morning, late at night, do a little bit of writing. But the key there is to just be persistent and regular and consistent, really is the right word. So, you have to stay on it. It's kind of like with anything, if you come up with excuses to put it off, it's just going to become too burdensome. So, I did a good job staying on it as I went through, and stayed on. I delivered it on time by the deadline, everything like that, and it worked out pretty well. But yeah, I also communicated very. I tried to communicate very openly with my family and my wife to make sure that we were really in that together. I think that's important as well. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going off to do this thing, just kind of give me my time. um, there were times where I really needed to get stuff done, but uh, my wife was really supportive there as well. So that made a big difference too.
Great, great. Well, so what I'm hearing is there's nothing magic. You just have to stick with it and don't think it's going to happen overnight. Or
Yeah,
something like
that.
that.
And then I would say the other thing is I definitely experienced challenges like writer's block.
Mhm.
It's a little maybe writer's block with a technical book. That's not quite the right term, but when I started a new chapter, and of course I had an outline and I had thoughts, but starting a new chapter and then going through um, these mental exercises once again, where I would think, first of all, what do I really have to say about this? Even though I had a lot to
Mhm.
say, and then
Sure.
does anybody really want to read this? And that's something that, if you're going to be creating content, whether it's an online course or a book or even a blog post, I think you have to put that out of your mind. It's true that not every blog post is read by thousands of people. I mean, sure, there'll be some that maybe don't resonate with people, or the content is common. Fine, that's fine. But um, you have to kind of get past the worry that, well, somebody else has already said this, or nobody really will care. Because if you can't get past that hurdle, obviously you'll never be able to share your content. So that was something that I had to go through, and it's really funny to look back because at the time, there was way less content out there than there is
Mhm.
today. I mean, there's probably 10 times, 20 times more content over the past 5 years just about Salesforce and the technology. But at the time, um, I looked at actually the help documentation as like so prolific. And I thought, there's so many, help articles out there. Is this really going to help? And it obviously it absolutely did. So I just had to push through that. So that's a good point, and that's something that I would definitely encourage people to think about. Is if you're blogging, you're presenting, something like that, you just gotta have to go for it. Not be too worried that it's going to be a home run with everyone. It may or may not be really successful in terms of helping people, um, but you're not going to be able to do anything if you don't just go forward. You know.
Sure, sure. So let's talk a little bit about the content of your books. You've picked two interesting topics as far as I'm concerned. One is, and I'm interested in both of them. The first, let's talk a little bit about clicks, not code development. Do you have a thought as to, I don't know about you, but I've come across a number of Salesforce orgs where there's been a lot of code, not clicks development to do things that can easily be done with the Salesforce interface. And my personal thing is that's because you let developers go into your Salesforce org without really understanding Salesforce. But do you have some insights into how, as Salesforce professionals, people can try to encourage more declarative or clicks,
Yeah.
not code programming?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's definitely a lot to that. I'll be the first to say, while I've written a book on declarative development, and I don't write code myself. Um, yeah, Customization and code on the Salesforce platform can be extremely powerful, and they're critical. There are solutions that absolutely require code, and there are no clicks that will satisfy those specific requirements. So, huge fan of that. But you bring up a good point, which is that there may be challenges at times understanding the platform and how powerful the declarative aspect is. And I think, if you look at it this way, if you're a developer from an outside platform, it's understandable if you come into the Salesforce world and you think, great, I'm going to learn Apex, I'm going to learn how to develop lightning components, and you really focus on that side of it and see it as, I'm a developer, I'm going to stay on that technical side. And I think that's a bad move to come in thinking that way. To your point, there are a lot of solutions that can be delivered without any code, and a lot of solutions that should be delivered without any code. You don't want to add code if you don't need to, if it's not actually bringing additional value in terms of functionality or performance or something like that. So I think that's really important. And when I wrote the book, my intended target wasn't just the new person to Salesforce or an admin. Sure, that was a main consideration, but also someone who would be a developer like that, who's new to development on Salesforce, to understand, hey, make sure you're aware of all these tools. A developer, while they may not use Process Builder a lot, or workflow or flow, they should be aware of it. They should, and really a solid Salesforce developer would know not only the code side, but that other side as well. And then they might not be the ones to build a process. Let's say maybe there's somebody else in their organization to do that. But they don't look at it like, well, um, you know, I'm a developer, so it's going to be code. That's what I do. It's more like, what is the best solution on the platform? And I will mention, I'll name drop someone who's very, very well known in the ecosystem is David Liu. He works for Google. He's a Salesforce MVP, and he's just done a lot. He has online courses. He's pretty much everywhere. You'll see him at events and stuff like that. Well, he's done some really interesting work around analysis of which tool should I use. So he's done some comparisons of should code versus declarative and which tool, and uh, some interesting analysis there. And I like his approach because he basically says what's the right solution and then applies it. So yeah, I think that's the right way to go at it.
Cool. I'm going to switch over to communities now, which I think it's a newer Salesforce product. And we do have a question from the audience, but first I just want to get your general uh, introduction to why did you get interested in communities, and what do you think the strengths are of communities? I think what I hear from some people is I can just build a website. I don't have to pay all that money for Salesforce communities. So first question, how'd you get into it? Second is, why use communities over a, WordPress or some other cheaper, perhaps cheaper solution?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Yeah, communities started in 2013, so it's been a little while, but Lightning communities were introduced just a few years back.
Mhm.
Now they're the norm. Up until now, the enterprise communities were built on Visual Force, and there still are probably a number of communities out there that are Visual Force communities, no doubt. But in terms of where things are headed now, it's Lightning is the focus. Personally, I love communities because it's all about creating a unique experience. In sales and thinking back, if you look back a few years when communities first started, I mean, then more than ever, you had really e- a limited presentation or display in terms of what the internal Salesforce org looked like. It's come a long way since then, but it basically it was what it was. It wasn't very attractive. Now, when communities first launched, like I was saying, other than Visual Force communities, they weren't the most beautiful either, but they've come a long way. So the ability to create a really beautiful digital experience is something that I love. I mean, I when I was younger, I used to do a lot just in general with websites. So I've always been interested in web experiences. So it's pretty interesting. It's neat to be able to get away from the Salesforce look and feel, and really create something that a client loves. The other thing is, if you're looking for, and this is a segue into the second question, if you want to open up Salesforce to an external user, that being a partner or a customer, you really don't have you have limited options. You're not going to bring those users into the internal org, of course. That just doesn't make sense. It would be expensive, and for security reasons, that would never make sense. So that's not something that's recommended. So you're going to have to do something externally, and then, like you said, there are some other options. You can go, if you're talking, cheap. You can go with, build a website on whatever. You can build a Weebly or WordPress website. You can go big too, and you can go with, let's say, Adobe Experience Manager or something like that to build something beautiful. Um, the real value of a Salesforce community, I think, lies in the fact that you have such power at your fingertips. You have all of the CRM data available to you with no integration. You have, and then because of that, you can leverage all the tools and all the logic, all the metadata that you have in your org. So, if you think about, great, you can spin up a nice looking website quickly on some other platform, but then you're going to have to build your custom integration, and that's really, I know, I mean, Salesforce acquired MuleSoft, and of course, integration has come a long ways over the past few years, but still, that's not something anyone desires. Is I really want a highly custom, heavy integration to manage over a long period of time. And so the fact that you can leverage all of the standard platform aspects, like with sharing and things like that, when it comes to security and visibility, I mean, it's really powerful. So yeah, there are definitely cheaper options, but if you want to fully leverage Salesforce and provide that data to your external users, it's hard to justify um, going around it unless you have some specific requirement, is basically what I'd say. Now, if you're looking at like a public website with no aspect of personalized authentication or personalized data, that gets into a little different area, because in that case you might still be leveraging some of the CRM data, but it's not going to be as valuable. You're not taking advantage of as much. And actually, mentioning public communities, if you guys weren't aware, in summer 20, major changes coming. Most of you will see summer 20 in the next few days. It's around July 17th, 18th. And you know what guest users can do in a Salesforce community. will be restricted even more. And there are reasons for that. But bottom line is what I'm saying, on the public community side, yeah, you're not getting as much value out of it, but anything that's going to require login or, my account information or my products, anything like that, where you have something personalized to you, it's you just remove so much time and money managing integrations and custom functionality. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, and in that vein, we had a question here from Charlie in the audience. Uh, Phil, thanks for sharing. Have you used the mobile publisher service to make a customer community into a mobile app? In mobile app, do the screen flows still work? What are the common problems you have encountered? I assume he means with mobile.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've worked with Mobile Publisher a few times at Seven Summits. I've done some research, posted blog post about it. It's somewhat high level, but you can check that out. That's on the Seven Summits blog. If you go to sevensummitsinc.com. In terms of flow, I will confirm. I can't remember right now if flow. I believe it's supported just like anything else. There aren't a lot of exceptions when it comes to mobile publisher. It's not like, well, it works, but these 10 things just won't render or don't work in your mobile publisher app. For the most part, everything's there. There are a couple things that are coming along. I'd assume yes, but I'll follow up. So I'm pretty easy to find online. So if you want to find me after, I can confirm that. But I assume yeah, that's something that's Flow would be supported there.
Um, since we're going to audience questions, I'll ask.
Sure.
Anonymous asks, good old Anonymous, how do you find your niche area in Salesforce? The right intersection between the demand for your talent and what you like to do.
That's a good question. So this individual is saying, they're thinking of two aspects here. Demand what you like to do, kind of maybe a little bit of a Venn diagram here, and looking for that overlap. And actually, it's funny because there's something I came up with a diagram once, somewhere buried in all my notes, that kind of shows something similar to that. Like, here's where you would want to focus on, as if you're trying to become an expert in an area. I would say. There is such demand in the Salesforce ecosystem in general, which is a unique thing, that there's almost no area that would be something that wouldn't generate some interest. So you can almost, to a degree, say, uh, you're not that. Don't worry about demand so much. Again, Salesforce ecosystem. Now, if you're coming from a different platform or something like that, sure, that's something to look at. And yeah, there are legacy areas of Salesforce and some things that you know writing blogs about classic interface, yeah, might not be the future. But even that, really, there are still a lot of users on that. So, point is, I would say don't worry too much about demand, and I would just focus the most on what your balance of what you're passionate about, and look for some validation, some external validation that you have some expertise, if that makes sense. I guess what I'm saying is, you do have to have some knowledge that's valuable. So it's one thing to be passionate. You could love Service Cloud, but you do have to have something unique to add. So you can run that by some other people, ask them, hey, here's what I'm thinking about bringing to the table. But the biggest thing is just be interested and passionate about it. That'll be the best fit, because if you start focusing on an area that maybe isn't something that you care all that much about, it's just going to become a drag over time. So, for me, what's really cool is, and this isn't really a coincidence, but I focus on communities, and I work for Seven Summits, and we focus on the main product at Salesforce that we're dealing with is Community Cloud, and so my day job and then kind of my what I do in the ecosystem is all related. So that's another thing to think about. If there's an area that you really love and you're passionate about, there are a lot of careers in the Salesforce ecosystem. So if you can overlap those things, then definitely try to do that. You know, if you're doing a very niche specific job on the Salesforce platform that doesn't align with something that you really care about that you're an expert in, again, that'll just make it harder because there may be times when your company would see, you know, you have a lot of focus in an area that maybe is a distraction from what they do. So just kind of hopefully that'll help. But that's a way to really make it a win for everyone. You know, your company will be super excited that all your content is related to what they're doing. You're passionate about it, and trust me, there'll be some demand somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. So you've done some videos on Pluralsight, or some, I guess we call them classes. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then there's somebody from the audience that has some questions about it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's been pretty interesting. You know, as we talked about already, I've written a couple books on Salesforce, and that's a very specific medium. And in the technology world, you know, maybe that's having a paperback book isn't necessarily what you'd expect, but I've actually been surprised by how many people have come up to me and told me that they love having a physical book. But Pluralsight obviously is a great platform. It's kind of a natural fit for teaching and sharing expertise because it's digital, it's easily accessible, and definitely Pluralsight has doubled down on the Salesforce content. So I don't know when their first Salesforce course was published, but they have quite a bit more now than they used to. So yeah, that's been a great experience. So I've been a part of I've authored two courses. One is a play-by-play course that is really run by someone named Don Robbins, and that's like a conversational style course. So there's definitely a lot of prep that goes into it. Not nearly as much as a regular course, but it ends up being a conversation. And what we do is we tackle a real-world business problem and we solve it. We talk through it and we solve it, and so that whole series is pretty interesting. I don't know how many he has out there now. I think upwards of 50. And they're pretty interesting. So you can check out Salesforce Play by Play with Don Robbins for that. Um, and then I just published a course, which is more a traditional Pluralsight course. And yeah, definitely a lot of work, very different from the book, but also overlapping as well. And it was pretty cool to do that. You know, I'm at the end of the day, it's the same general idea. Um, I want to communicate how to do a certain thing in a way that resonates with people, that helps them and it enables them, equips them to do their job better or to do a new job. And so a lot of that overlaps there. But you know, instead of just kind of thinking and putting my thoughts onto paper, it's a lot about creating diagrams and visualizing material. And I have a lot of diagrams in the book, but again, it's definitely a different medium. So, and of course, the audio recording and all that's a little bit different as well. So, you got to make sure your energy's up, and you know you had your Wheaties that morning, but that was very rewarding. So, yeah, I have a course that just came out, and there's a good bit of material, about 2 hours worth, and I am starting actually my next course today, literally today. So I do see the question there. How much time have invested for each 1 hour video? What's your advice for someone who's planning to make videos? Yeah, great question. So Pluralsight will say their guidance is you spend about 40 hours per hour that you produce. I think that's reasonable. Um, I think going forward in my second course, I think that'll be accurate, and maybe even slightly less than that because now I have the hang of it. I probably spent a little more than that on the first one. I didn't track it all, but maybe 100 hours, and I produced 2 hours of work. So, and that's a lot, obviously, when you have a full time job to fit that into nights and weekends. Um, but yeah, same thing as writing a book. You know, you'll want to be disciplined about it. Don't push off, you know, because of things that come up. You got to just keep on track and get through. And Pluralsight does a great job of breaking down, and you're a part of this when you author the course, breaking it down into small chunks. So you have a course which is split into modules that make sense with the overall content, and then within those you have these clips. The clips are about 2 to 6 minutes each, so you really focus on those, at a time, which helps a lot. If you're looking at doing 30 minutes of recorded material at a time, that would be overwhelming. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
So in terms of, so you have this one-on-one communities course out, and you also have another communities course, the one that you did all the prep for and the diagrams and everything. Of all the content, I assume that's comparable to the subject is basically the same as your book. Of all the content on Pluralsight, how many hours do you think would equal a book roughly? How many hours of Pluralsight? How many Pluralsight courses would equal the content in your book? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, so I worked with Pluralsight to actually come up with the curriculum for the Community Cloud path, which
Okay.
involves 4 courses. Um, I'm authoring 2 of those. I have a colleague who's actually doing one of the 4. And so yeah, it's I'll do my best to answer that. But yeah, the book is really as comprehensive as I could be. I try to include everything possible in there. And so probably the basically the 3 courses, there are 3 on declarative items and 1 on customization. So those 3 together are comparable to what's in the book. There's probably a little bit more in the book because I could kind of structure it however I wanted. But yeah, I'd say 3 to 4 courses equates to what's basically in the book there. Now on the declarative side, which I haven't done any Pluralsight on the declarative side, but um, that book that so I wrote a second edition of that book, which came out last year, and that was quite a beast. It actually came in over 500 pages, which was that's quite a bit for a tech book. But that one would be a few more courses. Yeah, I pretty much try to cover everything possible on the Salesforce platform in that book, which was a
Well,
lot of
then you
work.
got to
But
bring out another edition, right? With all the new stuff
yeah,
coming
I
out
mean,
with flows and
right. Yeah,
everything.
that one I added. There was so much that came in over the past 5 years, like Process Builder and Flow has changed so much that it required a lot of just net new. But yeah, then you can keep things updated, hopefully without changing too much. But that's the good thing about the Salesforce platform with its 3 releases a year is that there's always fresh content. So yeah, that makes
Yeah.
it hard on a physical book author, but that's okay. That's why there's so much content out there, is because there's so much new stuff that they're creating.
Yeah. Hey, Jason has asked a question of whether Seven Summits does full platform consulting or if you only do community solutions.
Yeah, so the way we message is we do community-led multi-cloud solutions. So the answer is yes, although definitely, we are very focused on communities. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for, and of course, you can reach out to me directly if you want. But yeah, we do multi-cloud solutions for sure. We're just best known for some of the amazing experiences we create through communities.
Well, we have a couple minutes left. Is there something else you wanted to talk about? Or I know that you were probably do some other things in addition to writing books and Pluralsight and being an MVP
Yeah,
that you
just
might want to touch on.
sure. My I really wanted to make sure anyone who attended or listens to the recording, um, leaves feeling encouraged and inspired to share what they have. And so, just to recap a little bit of that, first of all, you have to start small, and I think blogging is an excellent way to do that because you can go grab a WordPress site, a free version, and just start blogging. Come up with a topic, come up with one specific thing that you solved on the Salesforce platform, and spend some time and make it a quality post. It's not about quantity at all. Really put your heart into that. Maybe you write it over a month. That's fine. Share that out and start and then leverage social media as well. Social media is huge in the Salesforce ecosystem. So get a Twitter account if you don't have that. Share it on LinkedIn and drip it out there over a few days. And this is a pattern to follow, I think, for some period of time. This is a great way to put content out there. And what'll happen over time is you'll have some followers, some subscribers, and they'll start sharing out your stuff, and that gets really exciting. When you see that not only certain people um, are being equipped and enabled through this, but that they're actually sharing it out further, which is really, really cool. So blogging is a great way to start, and then consider these other mediums as well. You can record short videos, leverage YouTube if you want. um, some people do podcasts. Now that's a bigger one, but it doesn't have to be as big as, oh, I'm going to write a book or publish a course on Pluralsight. These are big things. So I'd say start small, be passionate about what that is, and focus on quality, focus on value. And trust me, you might feel like this is something that has been covered before. There's a lot of material on it. But if you have a unique voice and you communicate well and you solve a problem that others can relate to, it'll have a lot of value. So, there are a lot of smart people in the Salesforce ecosystem who are really motivated. So I would just encourage you to start there and see where things go, and just look for opportunities to teach, to share. If you have an opportunity to present, at your own company, take advantage of that. And yeah, always reach out. You can always reach out to someone like me or other Salesforce MVPs are happy to share as well. So I just want to encourage you there to think small and just continue that. And it's kind of a long process, but if you have something interesting to say, I think it'll definitely get picked up eventually in the ecosystem.
Great. Well, that's a great finish. Appreciate your time so much today, Phil. Thanks for participating. Thanks to all the people who participated. I want to let everybody know about our next webinar. You enjoyed this one. We're having some Salesforce Summer 2020 release highlights. We've got two longtime Salesforce consultants, Piyush Singhal and Bill Appleton. Piyush is from HIC Global, and Bill's from a consulting firm called Metazoa. That'll be the 30th of July, and everybody who's participated in this webinar will be getting a reminder of that with a link to sign up if you're interested. So thanks again for participating. Thanks for Phil, and we hope to see you at the next webinar.